Well, that was weird. Did you notice? Hi, everybody. Did you all notice that basically it's actually what we saw was completely different to what actually was streaming? How weird was that?
Yes, it's
Anyway, that's the
crazy.
way to start. That's the way to start the new year, isn't it? In total confusion as to what's going on. Nothing like it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very cold and snowy West Yorkshire.
Mhm.
In our case, I think Phil, you're in Harrogate. Is that's still West Yorkshire, or is that
North.
North Yorkshire?
North.
Yeah.
North Yorkshire. So yes, so it's very snowy, which is quite apt because we've just come off the back end of Christmas, and we're all skint. And that's why we are very, very, very pleased to have Phill Holdsworth from Aurum Gold. Phil is a money psychologist, and he is going to talk to us about spending habits and being skint after Christmas, etc. And while we talk about that, we got Mick, who is going to be doing all the bells and whistles behind the scenes. So if you've got any comments or anything you want to say, like Ali, who wants snow, apparently. I don't know, Ali. I think you're probably going to get your wish sooner or later because it's blooming cold. Then basically drop your comments into the comment section and your questions, and then, well, basically we will we will put them to our guest today, Phil, and see what he has to say. So, hello, Phil.
Hi there. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No worries at all. Did you have a good Christmas?
I had a very good Christmas, thank you. Spent with family, grandchildren, of which I've got 8. So
Wow.
busy,
Get
but
a telly.
lovely.
Get a telly. Tell your kids to get televisions. Jesus.
Yeah.
8 grandkids. Gee whiz. Yeah. So you had a good Christmas. Obviously, it's better with the kids, isn't it? I think when you get to the stage where everybody's grown up and all the rest of it, it's a little bit less interesting. It's kind of like, yeah, morning, you're right, oh, booze, yeah, why not? Ooh, it's Christmas. But yeah, so lots of people coming off the back of Christmas, Phil, with like kind of thinking, oh God, how much did that cost us? Because, well, quite simply, it's been commercialized to death. But at the end of the day, we do spend too much, don't we?
There is that propensity, isn't there? I think Christmas is one of those periods in our year where there's almost like false expectations. We have our own expectations and what we want and the impact that perhaps we want on our family members. But also there's that sort of societal expectation and pressure. You just watch the marketing that goes on around Christmas. So there's a lot of pressure on people to perhaps spend more than they either intended or more than they have.
Yeah, for definite. I mean, the pressure thing is the biggest thing. Not only the marketing, but they market to the children now.
Yeah.
Don't they? They market for that nagging power, the nagging power. And I think there's a lot of parents out there who probably suffer from the nagging power that is put on them, because everybody's got the latest gadgets and all the rest of it. It's a very consumer society, but so what kind of things then? What kind of things can we do to well, I'm probably not a very good candidate because I use Christmas to get underpants and socks. Heather says to me, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I go, "They're all right. Pants." That's me sorted. I'm a simple man.
Yeah. I just wonder what is it about that being asked what you want for Christmas, because I'm just the same as you, Gareth. My mind just kind of goes blank, and then we kind of fall back on the pants and socks and things like that. So, but
it's so convenient. I mean, you get all of the pants and the socks and stuff that you need. A nice jumper, that kind of thing. Does me. I don't have to shop for clothes all year. and smellies as well, and I don't have to shop for all year for smellies.
Oh yeah, they're a staple diet at Christmas time, aren't they, smellies? But I'll tell you one thing that really struck me. I had a conversation with a client of mine one day and said to me, I don't go in for that branded stuff. And I thought, yeah, there's more and more people who are saying they're not influenced by these things, and it doesn't really sort of ring their bells. But then later on in the conversation, we were talking about buying presents for our loved ones, our family members, those friends, and so on. And this person then said, "Oh, I always get branded things." And I said, "Hang on a minute. You told me you didn't buy branded stuff. You weren't bothered about it." And they said, "Yes, but it's all about how much you value people, as though branding shows value." And to this person asked, "But how much do you value you?"
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That ended up being quite an interesting conversation, because more people will buy or overspend for other people, but spend very little on themselves.
Yeah.
And the question is, why is that? What's driving? What's the motivation behind it? And I think one of the things is to do with our values, what we value, and if we value other people and we want to put a smile on their face, then we're more likely to spend more on other people than on ourselves. But equally, how do we see ourselves in the process as well? So that's something that sits behind the motivations as to why we all spend what we do at Christmas time. What's driving our choices? And if we don't understand that of ourselves, whatever we do in terms of planning, we can have the best laid plans, and we've saved so much for different things, and yet wonder why we're always overspending, because we don't understand ourselves and what motivates us. So I think that's the key.
Do you think some of that comes from your upbringing as well, though?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I think that the thing is, it starts with how we observe, say, our parents, guardians, or what I would say significant others. That's people who influence our life in our developmental stages. And so these can sort of shape our mindsets, our values, our beliefs around money. I'll give you an example. There was a young lady who was a student at university, and she found herself in extreme difficulty financially. But when we actually started to look at the backstory, it went right back to her grandmother, who, when she was little, was brought up in a very difficult and very poverty-ridden sort of household, really. And as the years passed and she grew up and started to sort of do well and accumulate and so on, she had decided that she didn't want her granddaughter. So she had a child herself, and then her child had her granddaughter, and she said, "I don't want my granddaughter to go through what I went through." So she was constantly putting money in her granddaughter's bank account. Right. So her granddaughter got to the stage where nobody had actually talked to her about money and how she could manage it and her responsibility for it and so on. She just came to accept the fact it was always there. But when her grandmother passed away, she didn't realise, and she kept spending as though it was still always there. And it came to light when she tried to get her first job, and she was rejected. And when she asked why, it was on the basis that she got a poor credit record.
Oh, most of it, right? I see. Yeah. Wow. I thought you were going to say that she suffered from the problem that most of us suffer from, where there's just always too much month left at the end of the money.
Yeah, well, that is very often the case, isn't it? You're just thinking, yeah, that seemed to be a bit long, that month.
Yeah, that was a 7-week month.
Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it? How leading up to Christmas, many people will get paid early because of how Christmas is in the month. But don't necessarily see that. They just treat it as, this is my standard payment, and treat it accordingly. Do you know, less than 50% of the working population have a financial plan. So, we talk about budgeting, although I do think budgeting has negative connotations. I don't know about you, but, I've asked people, when I use the term budgeting, what does that conjure in your mind? And they think of I can't do and restrictions and lack and and cutbacks. And so I said, well, forget budgeting then. Let's call it a spending plan, because we're going to spend it at some point. It may not all be spent here and now, but it's a spending plan. But it's interesting how so few people even have that in place. And so when you come to Christmas time and they just treat it as a standard month and forget they've got more weeks to accommodate afterwards, it's no wonder there's more month than money.
Yeah, it's funny when you turn around and you say that, budgeting, oh yes, restricting and cutting down, whereas a spending plan is because you are going to spend it. I mean, we budget for our food. That's something that we do. But we always try and keep it down by buying decent fresh food and cooking everything from scratch. But it's handy that I like cooking. It's a funny one. I like that, a spending plan rather than budgeting. I think there's good.
I think the other thing as well is, and this is the advantage of having a plan in place anyway, is that over a period of time, you can look back and actually monitor your spending patterns. So I think it's great what you were saying about, you like the home cooking and you, and I know we've talked about this before, and you like the sort of natural sort of foods and so on, but the organic things. But people will talk about those practices, but they miss some of the behavior that is automatic. It's unconscious, and it's just a part of them. And because it's a part of them, they don't think about it. And it's those things that we want to unpick, because oftentimes it's those things that actually self-sabotage our future aspirations, what we want to achieve with our money. And so we use a tool called Money Habitudes to actually identify somebody's money personality, so that we can see what kind of behavior takes place when a person has to make quick decisions. Have you ever experienced, say you've been in a store buying something and they said, well, it's on a special offer, but you've got to make a choice today because it's running out today?
Yeah.
And it's a very common practice, and retail outlets use psychologists to inform them of customer behaviour and how they can get the best out of customers, how they can get more sales. And so they use these tactics to put us under pressure, because they know that we often will make choices out of our emotions rather than our rational thinking.
Yeah.
So my advice to anybody in any situation like that, where they go, it's a special deal, it's on sale, you've only got so long to make a choice. Walk away. So I'm going to think about it. And if you go back and it's still on special offer and you can afford it, fine. But at least you've walked away and you allowed yourself time to think more rationally about your purchase or lack of.
Yeah, they get that gets my wife all the time. The old oh, it's an offer, oh, it's on now, and I'm thinking, God, you didn't even need it.
Yeah,
you didn't even need it, and it'll probably sit there now for forever, just not being used.
It's interesting. Christmas time's the biggest influencer of that, I think, with regards to you want to have a good time at Christmas. So it's all the preparation, from the food, the booze, to the presents, and all the various marketing ploys that come in to get us to buy or spend more. So some people listening to this might say, well, actually, I'm very good. I always put a spending plan or a budget down. I know what I've got to spend and what I'm going to buy. But even then, they can say, but I do try and get those special offers, and I got a real deal today because I got, 3 for the price of 2.
Yeah.
But what they're not realising is they've still spent more than they intended, because they only intended to buy one, and they budgeted for one. And it's this psychology behind it that gets us to behave in a manner that we didn't plan for, we didn't anticipate, and we didn't, because we don't understand ourselves, we fall into time and time again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's like these supermarkets give you these cards that'll give you back bonuses, just literally to track your spending habits. And except for Aldi don't do it, which is quite good, because their model is pretty much, let me throw your food into your basket. I went to an Aldi in near Berwick-on-Tweed, and it actually had a self-serve section. And I actually felt obligated to throw all my food through the checkout as quick as I could. It was instinct,
It's that habit, isn't it? You've seen it so often, and you feel
I'm
like
going
you're just
too slow.
gonna...
There was a bloke there monitoring the checkout, as you're doing it and all the rest of it. And even he was going faster, faster, faster. Jesus. But yeah, they do. They track your spending habits. They throw these offers at you. I go sometimes to the supermarket and I see things, and it says, this is like a third off or whatever. Yeah. And then you actually look at, like, it'll be a 500-gram version, and you look at the 200-gram version, and I use an actual example, where a 2-kilogram bag of sugar cost literally £1.89. Yeah. But 2 1-kilogram bags cost £1 each. Yeah. Well, and it was like no brainer for me, but they do. If you actually look a little bit around, you probably find that you can save money from the offer. You know.
Yeah, you have to be quite savvy. I think it was Peter Kay who coined the phrase "eye level is buy level." Where they position things on aisles and at the end of aisles, and also by the checkouts. What they position there and the things that they're wanting to push a bit more. But if you're quite savvy, and all of us are, and I'm saying that, I'll explain why I'm saying that in a moment, but if we're quite savvy, we can actually save quite a bit in our shop. And we've just got to be mindful of the offers and the weights and so on. And it's not difficult. And coming back to being savvy, and the fact that we all can be savvy. The one thing that I often hear, which I think is terrible, and that is people say to me, I'm bad with money or I'm no good with numbers. That's a very popular comment and thought process. And it often stems by what had been said to them when they were much younger, whether it's a parent who they could never please, or whether it was a teacher who just, it's a throwaway comment, but they don't realise the impact that comment may have on a person's future life. And I say to people, do you go to the supermarket? And go, oh, yeah, of course. I said, well, do you add up? Do you subtract? Do you divide? Do you multiply? Well, yeah. Well, who said you're bad with numbers? Who said you're no good with money? Yeah. And we assume that to be good with money, we've got to be like investment managers and bankers and financiers, and we actually don't. It's a lot simpler than that. So
it's amazing how deep the psychology runs, isn't it? About, as you say, going back to criticism that you got as a kid, or as from a parent or something like that. It's very, very interesting. I do like the whole psychological side of things. But
the other thing that sits behind that as well, Gareth, is this. We can be quite judgmental of other people, and that's something that's not particularly pleasant in our society, in so much as we look at people and we have the notion at top level, if you're a saver, you're good with money. If you're a spender, you're bad with money. I think that's terrible, because everybody has their reason for doing what they're doing. A person can be a saver, but absolutely riddled with anxiety. A person can be a spender and can be the happiest person going. So we have to ask the question, what's the motive that sits behind it? So if behind the saver there is fear, the fear of lack, the fear of poverty, the fear of losing it all, that is a terrible place to be, because that is such a stress inducer and anxiety laden. And so we have to understand then, well, where did that come from? And it's often looking back over people's lives, experiences they had. You mentioned parents, so that's one big influence, how parents manage their money. And if there was lack in the household, then wouldn't be surprising if somebody is more frugal, or we're looking in and saying, oh, they're quite frugal, they're savers. But yeah, what's causing them to be that way is nothing to do with what we would class as being good, planning ahead for something. It's more to do with, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be in that place. And it's this fear driven. And so when they come to spend it, they really, really struggle spending their money. Spending their money on themselves because they feel guilt and shame for doing it. The other side of the coin is the fact that somebody brought up in a household where actually money wasn't an issue. And one of their values is they just like pleasing other people. They like putting a smile on other people's faces. But their problem is they do it to an extent where they don't leave anything for themselves. And you've got these two ends of the spectrum of behaviours. And it's terrible if it's in a marriage or a relationship situation where you've got one person who's quite frugal and the other one who likes to spend, but their reason for spending is actually a good reason. But one will say, why can't they be more like me? And we can't, because we're unique individuals. So the best thing we could do is by understanding ourselves, we then begin to understand others and have more empathy. So as a couple, we can then say, right, this is how I am, this is how you are, let's put it into our plan. Allow so much for you to spend on the things that you value, but also allow me to save so much because that's important to me.
Yeah, very deep. It's funny as well because you also, I mean, you have people who just the sole purpose in life is to actually make money and have more than anybody else. Oh yeah, Ali's great with money, but she just needs some. I think we all suffer from that one, Ali. But I mean, there's some people, you know, they just their entire life revolves around, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, these big conglomerates, these billionaires, these people who just constantly money focused all the time. And then, you know, you got personally, as long as I've got enough, I'm not a megalomaniac in any way that I just want more and more and more and more and more. I'm content if I've got enough, you know.
Yeah.
Which is a completely different end of the spectrum of money, really.
Yeah. There's a question I ask many of the people who I take through my financial wellbeing program, and that is, in a word, what does money mean to you? And it's interesting what comes back. You know, some people say choice, freedom, security, and so on and so forth. And then, so I say, well, this leads me into my second question then. How much do you need to have choice, to feel free, or to feel secure, or to have happiness? And people start racking their brains at that point because nobody's ever asked them that question. And then they'll come out with all kinds of figures, but in actual fact, they don't honestly know. But one of the things I find is that people who have either experienced or had lack at some point in time and say, I'm never going to go there again, will pursue wealth, initially for the right reasons. But as time goes along, they're not feeling that security. So they need to keep going. They need more. So whatever they say to you, you can say to them, well, double it, quadruple it, whatever. It will never be enough until you can settle within yourself that things like happiness comes from within. If it didn't, people like Nelson Mandela would have been the most miserable, vengeful people on earth and would have had the right to have felt that way. But here's a man who stood in a cell, could literally touch the cell walls where he was standing for 30 odd years, and he was more free than his captors. And so there is a thing to do with our mindset and how we see things. If we're looking for security in wealth, what happens when the market's not good or we lose our job? What happens to us as an individual? You see people crash. You just see them go under because they think I'm useless, I'm no good, nobody wants me anymore. Particularly in retirement as well. That's a very common theme, and it's got nothing to do with them. Their value comes from within, and they give their value to what they do or the choices that they make. It's not the other way around. But we tell everybody in society that the value comes from how much money you've got or what possessions you own and how big your house is or what kind of car you drive or what type of job you do. I asked a chap one day, I says, oh, what, who do you work for? And he says, I work for the council. I says, oh, any particular department? Oh, he says, yes, I'm in the environmental department. I went, oh, that sounds interesting. What kind of things do you do? And eventually he said to me, I collect rubbish. I'm a dustman. And I sense from him this embarrassment at telling me this. Do you know what? I think, hats off to the people who collect the dustbins, because if they didn't, who would?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a valuable role. And so therefore we shouldn't look down on it because it's a role, but we do because it's not like an investment manager. Oh, well, they must be really intelligent. And do you know what? I've seen some interesting behaviours in the investment management world where I think there isn't a great deal of intelligence there. And I don't wish to berate anybody, but I have seen choices being made where there's no sense to it. Yeah. So,
I can believe it. I really can. Yeah. The bin, when I was growing up, the bin man where I grew up had one of the biggest houses. Seriously, he did. He had one of the biggest houses in the village, and it was like, I whenever my father said, "Oh, if you don't do well at school, you'll be digging holes on the side of the road," I said, "No, bugger that, I'm going to be a bin man."
I know a story of a guy who he was a cleaner in a garage, and he just busied himself around his work for years and years, and nobody really took much notice of him until years later. They didn't know he got married and that he owned a house, and not only that, when he passed away, he was actually a multi-millionaire.
Bloody hell!
Because he just saved. He didn't spend it on anything. Now there may be certain mindsets and behaviours there, but it's just interesting, isn't it? How we have the perception of people, and we could be so wrong in our judgment of them. So
totally. So how do people get themselves onto your assessment kind of program thing, to the initial first steps of what would you recommend?
Yeah. Well, my advice is either contact us through our website, which is www.orumgold1word limited.co.uk.
Yeah, Mick will dump that stuff into the chat now. There you go.
Brilliant, thank you. Or through our LinkedIn, through my LinkedIn website. So if you just go for Phill Holdsworth on LinkedIn and look at all the contact details there, just contact me, talk with me. And if they'd like to do the Money Habitudes assessment, it's a great starting point to begin to understand yourself and I emphasize that because oftentimes we think that financial well-being is created through education or products, and it isn't. Believe me, it helps, but it isn't, and it equates to about 20% of what really truly makes up our financial well-being. The other 80% is understanding ourselves and what motivates us, what drives us, and interestingly, when we're under pressure, how different our decision making is then to when we've got all the time in the world to make a decision. Believe me, I've seen it in the investment management world. When the market was buoyant, the decisions being made were informed. They would look at all the research and be informed about it. But when the market was volatile, all of a sudden, the decision-making process went out to the window, and there's a thing called a bias that kicks in. And so, for example, herding bias would be, I want to follow the crowd. They must know something I don't know. I'm going to follow them. Even though the choice might not even be right for you or for whoever you're representing, for example. Confirmation bias, for all our drivers on here, have we ever driven down the road where we just get to the end and think, do you know what? All I've seen down there is red lights all the way along. Every traffic light I came to, red. But we missed the green. Because we believe every time I go down that road, I'm just going to hit the red light. So we don't see the green ones. And that's what they call confirmation bias. So when we're looking at our money, we'll look at what's happening around us, and we'll look for the things that will confirm our own beliefs rather than look for the evidence, the factual evidence. And that's what I would advise people to do. Whenever you're making a financial decision, don't make it emotionally. And when you are making that decision, look for the facts. So forget the deals, the offers, and so on. Look at the facts that sit behind it. And does it work for you? If it does, great. If it doesn't, walk away.
Yeah. I keep saying to my wife, do you really need it? But that doesn't work.
Yeah, of course we do. There's a reason why we need it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's fabulous. So, obviously you were a member of the Video Creators Club, and you've been doing some of our courses recently. You just embarked onto the editing course with Mick, which you got another 2 weeks off. And you're obviously planning to do some video work within Aurum Gold. I know we've had conversations over the years about certain types of content that you were going to be creating.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of things are you going to be putting together?
Well, one of the things I want to do, and I know you and I have talked about this as well, and that is actually take what I deliver, whether in person or online, and put it into an online course that people can access 24/7. So that's what I need to do, and actually build those into sort of small bite-sized chunks. I want to, at the end of the day, money. We make money very complicated, and it doesn't need to be. It can be simplified.
Yeah.
So, in terms of learning about it, learning about ourselves and learning about money should be made as simple as possible. And I don't mean that to denigrate anybody in any way. I'm just saying that stop making things complicated. They don't need to be. So that's one thing I need to do. Let me say the training I'm doing with Mick, that first session was brilliant, and I found it really, really helpful. So I'm looking forward to the next 2 sessions. So I would say to anybody who is considering using video and learning about how do I put the videos together, how do I edit them, how do I publish them on social media, to talk to you guys, because that's your specialism. And so far, you, Gareth, need to keep kicking me up the backside.
Oh, yeah, don't I know it?
Yeah.
You're not the only one. You're not the only one.
I'm sure. But the thing is, at the end of the day, we just know that this is where a lot of things are going these days. People like the quick, short, sharp videos with scripts apps on them so they can just read it, or they can just listen to them or just watch them, whichever. But yeah.
Brilliant. Well, if anybody is interested in creating any content for themselves, then by all means feel free to get in touch. Mick will drop the links into our Video Creators Club and our website as well. But I gotta say, Phil, there's so much to unpack there. We didn't have enough time. I don't think we could have just chatted all day, but that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that. So, yeah, if anybody, if you want to actually just start questioning and thinking about your own spending habits and your own attitude towards money, then I would highly recommend you have a chat with Phil. And if you want snow, come up to West Yorkshire. We've got loads of it. And next month, I believe it's the 19th, and we will keep to this date, I promise, unless again paid work comes in, because that's what happened in this case. We had to bump Phil because paid work. What more can I say? But yeah, so we'll be our next chat about will be a chat about LinkedIn and social media with Rachel Moore from Rachel Moore Social Media. So we look forward to that. It'll be again 12 till 2:30. We tend to do it about 30 to 45 minutes, and that'll be on the 19th of February. Okay, and then we've got chat abouts lined up for the rest of the year. All right.
I know Rachel, Gareth, and
brilliant.
I can definitely say Rachel is definitely one to listen to.
Oh, big star. Me and Mick did her course as well on the LinkedIn course that she does, and I thought I knew LinkedIn, and I came away going, I didn't know that. Really good, very good. So all it leaves me to do now is say thank you very much, Phil, for coming along, and
Thank you.
we will see you at the creators meeting on Wednesday, and yeah, we'll catch you later. So see you later, everybody. Ta-ra.
Thank you very much. See you later.
Cheers, mate.